She is an amazing vocalist. She is one of the finalists of this Toto Music Awards, which is a very prestigious thing which happens across the country once in a year, I guess. And yeah, let's give it up for Akrti. Let's give a warm
Thanks. Hi guys. My name is Akrti and I'm all the things that he described. I am. I'm very, very pleased to be here to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is sampling. Now, sampling is something that's very common in today's music, right? Pretty much every piece of music is borrowed from somewhere, whether it's ideologically or the physical sample itself. You all are studying music over here, right? Production, sound. Yeah, okay, cool. So how many of you have worked with samples before? Okay, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, 7, 8. Okay, you're missing out on the world of sampling. Luckily, we're going to talk all about sampling today, and I'm going to tell you how to sort of use samples in a creative way. Now, what is sampling? The ones who use sample, maybe you can volunteer and talk about what is sampling. Anyone? I don't know your name, so like when you stand up, it would be lovely if you can tell your name. Do you want to talk about sampling? Do you want to tell everyone like what's your idea of sampling?
So it's something you find.
Sure. It's fine, you can say.
So it's something you find interesting out of probably a track or a small section of something, and you put in your methods of craft, like probably reversing a clip or stuff like that, and making it your own.
Manipulate the sample. Do you have anything new to say? Yeah, because that's what it is. Sampling is basically when you take a small segment of an already existing piece of music or composition and you use it in your own composition, right? But probably you'll manipulate it in some way and make it your own, right? Does anyone know where sampling began from? It seems to be like one of those concepts that's always been there, right? Sampling. It makes sense. Everything is borrowed from somewhere. But specifically to sound, the world of sound where it's tangible, does anyone know where sampling started from?
Scientific research, like, or maybe scientific research on war.
War?
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
I mean,
why did you say
World
war?
War. I mean, people would want to listen to conversations or something like that.
That has to do with
Tape.
recording.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about sampling. Okay, anyway, in the 1940s, there was one guy called Pierre Schaeffer. He's a French composer, and what he did was take samples, sound recordings, raw recordings, and he created montages of these sounds, right? Like a collage, like a sound collage. And that concept came to be known as music concrete. Does anyone know what music concrete is? Have you ever heard of this term, music concrete? Music concrete is basically what you would, you can call it experimental music, right? So like I said, it's sound montages of any sound found in nature, which you call as found sound. You use found sounds and then you use it to make music or audio pieces, right? Are you familiar with any experimental music or sound artists? Yeah, cool.
I'd say Eden.
Sorry?
His name is Eden.
Eden?
Yeah.
Eden what?
Just Eden. E-D-E-N.
Just Eden. Okay, that's one. Anyone else? No, not experimental. Electronic, but not sampling. Oh yeah, sampling, yes. But I'm talking about music content, like completely experimental sound artists. Yes.
Igloo Ghost.
Electronic again. Not you wouldn't call him music content.
Like he's experimental in it.
Yes, for sure. So most of these electronic music as of today is very experimental, right? You use a lot of experimentations to come up with new things, but you wouldn't call it experimental music. The techniques would be experimental, as it is like with time everything is experimental, right? Which is why new things come up. But you wouldn't classify that as music concrete, or you wouldn't say that is an experimental music. Another composer called John Cage. Has anyone ever heard of John Cage? Okay, so he was also a very experimental composer, wherein he would use unusual objects to produce sound and put up sound pieces. This little section of the thing that you see is actually a visual representation of one of his pieces. You should, if you want, you should make a note of this person because he is really interesting to check out. So check out John Cage, and this piece is called Water Walk. Basically it's called Water Walk because he walks through the piece and he does a lot of different things with water being involved. You'll know what I mean when you watch the piece. This is something you have to check out. For now, I have an excerpt from the BBC documentary, The New Sound of Music. Back in the day when, music wasn't digitized, they used to use analog tape machines to kind of record things and put them together. That's how Pierre Schaeffer did it, right? He had pieces of tape which he cut up and made things into. You'll see what I mean.
The arrival of tape recorders meant even the most basic sounds could be transformed. Experimenting with music was no longer the monopoly of the imaginative musician. Even the earliest of tape recorders could manage quite happily the faithful reproduction of 3 notes twanged on the piano. It was the possibilities for unfaithful reproduction which also caused excitement. On this length of tape are those same 3 notes. If I wind this piece of tape through the machine by hand, at a speed which isn't constant and in a direction which is forever changing, those 3 twangs become a collection of quite different sounds. In fact, if we re-recorded this performance on another machine, I might end up with a sonata for 3 notes and tape recorder. And I wouldn't be the first. But let's take this creativity a stage further. Let's find the start of the last note. There it is. I'll cut the tape there.
Oh yeah. What? No.
Now I can take the end note, turn it the other way round.
No, it won't be recorded.
And put it back, ready to join up. So, what have we got now? Our first 2 notes are still the right way round, producing a boing sound with a quick start and a slow finish, or what musicians call sharp attack, gentle decay. Now we've turned the last note the wrong way round. We've got the decay first. Now it's become a sound. And if I finish the joins here, It should sound something like this. Crude stuff, you're probably thinking. But to some people, the possibilities of doctoring natural sound using the new magnetic tape became an obsession. In 1958, a reluctant BBC was forced to allow a tiny group of enthusiasts to get some gear out of redundant stores and establish itself here in 2 rooms in London's Maida Vale. The Doctor Who theme, just one of thousands of signature tunes, special effects and pieces of background music created by the Radiophonics Workshop since 1958. At this time, all over Europe, it was fashionable to make music out of the most unlikely things. An old lampshade, an empty tin can, anything that could make a sound could be doctored by the tape recorder. What have we got here? Box of gravel. Beautiful, beautiful. Something else? Heaven knows what this is. That makes a good noise. We need a basic rhythm, don't we? Or how about something as mundane as a metronome? Once you keep things going, what else could we use? One defunct alarm clock. Possibilities in it somewhere. Now add all these bits together on a tape recorder. Play some of them backwards, some of them forwards, some at the wrong speed, and this is what you end up with. Take one cash register, give its sound a similar treatment, and you have an ironic comment about Christmas spending. By playing around with tape, almost anything can become musical.
You get what I mean by music concrete, right? It's truly experimental in the way it's performed itself. Sure, if you do this in your production, then you have like a beat. It's not an experimental beat, it's just a beat where you have sampled something. But this performance of something of this sort, and if you go back and watch John Cage's Water Walk, it'll give you an idea of what experimental music space truly means. Does anyone have any questions so far? Cool. Sorry, 1 second. This is the first time I'm using a PPT in my life. So, yeah. So let's talk about samplers. Samplers, back in the day, the way they began is very interesting. There was this person called Harry Chamberlain who designed something called the Chamberlain. Now, the Chamberlain was something that doesn't look like this. This is the Mellotron. The Mellotron is kind of based on the Chamberlain. This is a sampler. Each key, just let me know, can everyone see this like clearly? Okay, cool. So each key has like a magnetic tape. Okay, so each key will play a magnetic tape which has a recording of an instrument which is playing the same key, right? So if you play C on this, I would have probably recorded C on the violin, and if I play the C on this, it will play the C of the violin. For us, present day, it's like, yeah, what? But back in the day, in the 60s, this was completely revolutionary. Think about it. You're playing the keys, but you can hear the violin, right? Everybody here has heard of the Beatles. I'm just assuming it's very possible that you haven't. Has everyone heard of the Beatles?
Yes.
Awesome. So you know the song Strawberry Fields. I'll play it for you. Strawberry Fields is a song that uses the mellotron. And it's a very distinct sound. 1 second. I'll play it on Spotify for it. It's a beautiful sound. So the mellotron is basically a sampler that has 3 instruments over here that you can switch between. Next, during these times came the Synclavio in the 1977, Fairlight CMI. CMI stands for Computer Musical Instrument. Look at it. If I was born in the 70s and I saw something like that, that would blow my mind. You see that pen over there? That's something like a touch screen back in the day, in the 70s. So that these instruments, basically the 70s and the 80s, really revolutionized the way we see sampling today. The way we see sampling today, we've really taken it for granted. And it's okay to take it for granted because something else will come up. Then came the emulator in the 80s, emulator 1 and followed by emulator 2. Then in the 70s and the 80s was when DJing, hip-hop DJs really changed the way they were sampling things. They used to DJ with vinyls, right? They did not have CDs or pen drives like we do today. So what they would do is they would sample a beat, just like a break beat from one, like just a segment of beat, and then loop it over another piece of music. So this was very nice for people who were rapping, or like this turned out to be like dance music, and basically looping from there took on different meanings for producers. Does anyone know any DJs from back in the day where who really took samples? Yes, very good. Yes, J Dilla. We have, after that we have the MPC series. Is everyone aware of the MPC? Right? Producers, all of us know what an MPC is. We have the Native Instruments machine. Have you heard of that? That's based on the MPC. This is the MPC 60, and then on the right we have SP 1200, which was actually pretty iconic in the sense a lot of producers were using this to make records like Beastie Boys, Dr. Dre. Everyone knows Dr. Dre, right? And Pete Rock and J Dilla, like someone said. Has anyone ever come across like the OG samplers like this? Yeah, it's quite rare to find these days, but it's not like impossible. They do sell, but like it's all second-handed. Very expensive. But what are the samplers what other samplers do you know of that you've heard of? Have you seen those tiny
Yeah.
samplers that, you know, in LA beat makers are saying? That's called the SP404, right? Then you have 1200. You have a lot of different kind of. Roland made a lot of these samplers. Have you heard of drum machines? Yeah. So you have these are basically sequencers. You know what sequencers are? Right. So then came the sequencers and samplers and drum machines. Drum machines are basically sequencers, right? Some pioneers of sampling in hip hop. J Dilla, Q-Tip from Tribe Called Quest. Have you heard of that? Okay. Awesome. Adam Horowitz from Beastie Boys. He used to rap and make the beats. Are you guys familiar with Beastie Boys?
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So is it okay to sample? Yes, it is okay to sample as long as you do it ethically, right? What is ethical sampling? You can't just steal someone's music and say I remixed it. You will get into trouble, right? There are copyrights. And a lot of producers, songwriters, music makers are not aware of these laws. Copyrights of a single piece of music can belong to multiple people. So if you use it, you might end up being sued by multiple people, and you have to pay multiple people. And it's really difficult if you get in the hands of labels. There have been a lot of instances where this has happened, and one very famous case is from the Beastie Boys. You should go read about it. Katy Perry came under scrutiny for something like this. Taylor Swift, whatever. You can read about these cases. How can you use samples ethically? One thing is you have royalty-free music, which is very much free for all. You can download them and you won't get into trouble. Or if you do end up using a sample that you didn't pay for, make it unrecognizable. Okay? Record it yourself. Buy the license. Pay for it. Or buy samples. There's a lot of producers these days who are like selling samples. So buy the sample, royalty free, make it unrecognizable, record it yourself, or buy the license. Very simple, very easy to follow this. How can you record your own samples? You can use your phone. It's a very good device to have. I have an iPhone. It has a really nice mic. But if you don't have a really good mic in your phone, you can buy something called Peripheral Microphones that you can attach to your phone. The top ones are by Zoom. At the bottom you have Rode. There's a lot of Sony, I think, also makes a few of these. These are nice. These are really nice. In case your phone doesn't have a good microphone, you can use these, or you can use portable digital recorders. I've been told that all of you are familiar with what this is. Can I have that? Thank you. This is one by Zoom. Has anyone used this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, these you can't move, but you do have some recorders where you can move the mics. So you can direction them however you want. These are great for field recording. I'm sure everyone's familiar with what found sound is, right? We spoke about this just like some time back. Found sound is what is found sound? Some of you look clueless, so I'm just asking. What is found sound?
Any normal sound you want to sample and then tweak according to your preferences.
Yeah, any sound you find is called found sound. Field recordings. You can go out in the forest and record birds or insects or leaves. You can go out to a restaurant, record cutlery. people talking, eating, whatever. These are found sounds, right? So these mics are really good. These recorders are really good for that. Okay, cool. So once you have these samples, what are some ways you can sample them and use them in your music? I'm gonna take you through some techniques that I use to manipulate sound. I have a project I've created over here. Wow, this is tiny. When I connect it to that, can you see?
Change the light gray.
Yeah, could you like turn off any lights that's like hitting that? No, that's the max.
Is the theme or dark or light?
We want to change the theme.
Abhijay, we turn off those lights.
Those are video
They want it.
Can
So
you
why would they need an honest
It's
very
very-
honest?
because the light is hitting the screen.
Those lights.
Music making is nice in the dark. Maybe you can increase that. Because it's important they see. So, what kind of music do you guys make? What? What? Anything. That's a great thing to start. Yeah, that's amazing. So the J Dada fan, who is that over here? It's you. What kind of music do you make? Oh, hip hop, nice. Cool. Does anyone over here make experimental music?
Oh, some sort of just like off,
You make experimental?
like temporarily.
Me? Some tracks have taken a break for more than a year. Some tracks get done within a day, within a session. Some tracks take I go into extremes. If I'm working on a track and I finish it right then and there. Or if I don't finish it, I take a really long time so that I can forget the track and then I'll come back to it because I need fresh ears. Otherwise, it's really easy to kind of lose perspective of what's going on.
So what happens when you're mixing? Do you take breaks while you're mixing?
Yeah, I take
How often
breaks.
is it?
As often as I feel, sometimes your ears, very often your ears tend to get tired. So you lose perspective. So you need to just,
Listening fatigue.
yes. So you need to kind of give yourself a break. For me, every 20 minutes to half an hour is a good time to just like get up and go do something and come back. When it comes to mixing, not when it comes to making a track. Making a track, I don't really take any breaks.
So how would you approach something? Would you have a sound in mind and you would try to recreate it with the sounds that you already have? Or would you take just a random sound and experiment to find?
Yeah, I'm more like,
Or both?
I'm more like find a sound and then experiment.
Wherever it goes.
Yeah, I don't get into synthesis, but I don't listen to a sound and say I'm going to recreate it.
No, but like, would you have a sound in mind and go through your library?
Oh yeah. Oh, that way? Yeah,
Like a
if I,
sound modified to
yeah. So if I have a sound in mind, I'll find the sample that's like the closest to it and then try to get that sound from the sample. Yeah.
Can you use any of sound that you just be sound?
Yeah, of course. There are no rules. You do whatever you want.
Like, how do you know when the track is done?
You never know when the track is done. You will never know when the track is done. This is something that I'm learning for myself because there are tracks that I'm just sitting on that are done, but I don't feel like it's done. That's the trouble of being a producer. Yeah, you need to let go. You need to exercise non-attachment with your tracks because after a point, there's always something you can work on. That's why it's great to have your tracks mixed by someone else. All of us know best what we want with our mixes, but it's this trap of like, it will never be done. Something is always off. Something is. One time you listen to it and you're like, oh. Yeah, the next time you listen to it, something is off again. So don't get into that trap. Know when a track is done. Let go. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Do I need this? Do I need this? Should I wear it?
No, you'll be training yourself. Which train yourself?
Okay, any more questions? You had a question, Pratap.
Oh, yes, I was about to ask, since you're into experimental music mostly, and you deal with sounds that are very random, like sometimes when you're making a track, doesn't it become so random that when a normal listener listens to it, it like doesn't even make sense? How do you like make it make sense?
That's up to you.
Huh?
That's up to you. It's perspective at the end of the day. The way I would make a sound make sense is not the same way you would make sense of that sound. Which was why I brought up the 22 challenge, where the sounds, the way they made sense to me, they made a completely different meaning when somebody else approached the same sound.
Yeah.
And that's what you're asking. Or are you asking, did I get your question right?
Kind of, because like if you take normal commercial music, like you can hear, okay fine, there's a guitar, there's a drum kit, there's this, that going on. But when you're working with experimental tracks, it kind of feels like there is no head and tail, but there is just sounds there, interesting sounds.
Yeah, you can have a head and tail to it. If you go on my SoundCloud, there is a recording of one of the performances that I've done. It's a live performance, and I made this piece about conversations and conversations, how relational conversations can get. For example, the way feelings translate through the way we talk or the way how we communicate, right? If you go on my SoundCloud, my name is Akrti, Akrti. You can find me on SoundCloud. There is a piece there is a recording of a live performance, one of my performances. If you sit with it, I think it's about half an hour long. It's a half an hour long piece. It's one single piece that was done live. You sort of understand the story of it, and the story can mean anything to you. Yeah, so you can have a head and tail. Some of the performances do not have a head and tail, and it's completely okay because they're like dreams. Your dreams don't have a head and tail, but there are little bits where you identify with, right? And there is a story you can take. Humans are wired to make up stories, and they want to relate to something. So yeah, finding meaning is up to the listener.
Nice way to put it.
What are some of the bands or artists that you listen to?
Way too many.
Anything like that?
Who was I listening to this morning? I was listening to the Beatles this morning, actually.
What if there's one name that you wanna take?
Huh?
What if there's just one name that you wanna take?
No, that's not possible.
Like that, just one name that influenced you the most.
Some of the names that influence you.
Can I play one track?
Start as you mean to go.
Why don't I just give you my Spotify history?
Start as you mean to go on. Start as you mean to go on by.
Oh, hey, you know what? I make playlists. So if you go on my Instagram, there is a link in my bio. There's shitloads of playlists that you can find, and yeah, that's the music I listen to.
What's your Instagram?
Yeah. Any other questions? What do you want?
Start as you mean to go on.
No, you don't.
I need to use the restroom. I need to use the restroom. What is that?
Start as you mean to go on.
Start?
As you mean to go on.
Oh God.
Why do you like This is electronic music.
No, I don't really. Yeah, so I did
It is electronic music, but not experimental in the sense of
How
music
would you
concrete.
define experiment?
Music concrete. So you all need to go back and please look up music concrete. Look up John Cage. Look up Pierre Schaeffer. Look at all these artists and truly understand what is experimental music. There's another artist called Hattis Noah, and you can find her. She does vocal experimental music. Experimental truly in the sense of experimental. Yeah, so go back and listen to all of that. Yeah, you can call this experimental but not experimental. This is electronic. Yeah.
Have you done any experiments with electronic music?
Yes.
Sampling electronic.
What?
Nothing.
Sorry, what did you say?
I said like sampling electronic music.
What do you mean sampling?
That's why I shut my mouth.
It's okay. Yeah, I do sample. I take samples. Like I said, it can be anything. And then I manipulate them and I make up stories. I think if you go on my SoundCloud and really listen to that one live performance that's been recorded, it'll kind of give you an idea. That piece is only voice based, so everything that's been used over there is voice based. Sometimes it can only be nature sounds, sometimes it can be. I put up this one performance where I used train, 3 sounds I used the train, the birds, and myself. So yeah, it depends on every performance, what I'm doing. Your question was? Sorry? Okay, I shall check it out. So, any more questions?
I know your music falls under experimental, but how would you?
No, my music doesn't fall under experimental.
What does your music fall under? Which genre do you think?
Moody, I guess. Yeah. Experimental is just one part of what I do. I really enjoy doing that, but I don't think I identify it.
So does your music, can your music be called electronic?
Yeah.
What
But
is
I
not-
also write songs with my guitar.
What is not electronic? Because
What is not electronic? So when he means electronic, yeah, everything is digitized. I know, like if you get into
not even license. But if let's say I have let's say I have a whole song which uses electronic elements.
electronic is a very broad term, isn't it? Yeah. So
And experimental is a subgenre of it, if you think of it.
no, experimental can be non-electronic also. Yeah.
But usually it is.
To come and join me in a musical, not musical, but like a sound journey. Okay, and I sort of take organic sounds, whatever they may be. Sometimes I use birds, trains, whatever it is, and then do some live manipulation to it. So it really isn't music. You're not going to listen to any harmony. You might listen to harmonies, I don't know. but like nothing typically musical is gonna happen. Like you're not gonna have any beats or anything or such things happening. So yeah, can you all like see what's going on? Okay, cool. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I have a loop over here. Okay, so that's the drum loop. Okay, this is the sample that I have. One of the most basic ways to use a sample is to chop it up. Put it down. Chop it up, right? Like that's the first thing you would do if you were starting out. So let's just randomly chop things up, I guess. I'm just gonna do it here. And maybe this bit. And I'm just gonna place it randomly somewhere else. It's a little weird, but it's nice. So if I were to just loop that bit, let's see what happens. It's got a rhythm. Cool. That's the first thing you can do. You can chop it up and you can place things around. Let's do a little more of that. I'm just gonna take that. I'm just being really random right now, okay? Okay, this is like super random. Okay, I like that. So one thing is you can do something like this. Next thing, he said you can pitch it up. So let's try pitching something up. Has anyone used Ableton over here? This is Ableton, by the way. I'm so sorry. Is anyone familiar with Ableton? A few of you are familiar with Ableton. Does anyone not know what Ableton is? It's cool. I have the opportunity to tell you, so just raise your hand. So everyone, you don't know what Ableton is?
No, I know.
You know. No, if there is anyone over here who has never heard of Ableton, please let me know. I would love to tell you what Ableton is. Cool, everyone knows what Ableton is. Okay, so I'm probably just gonna pitch this one up. Let's take that sample and pitch it up. Make it that obvious. So if I were to not play it. Cool. Another really simple way to manipulate your sample is to pitch it up or pitch it down, right? The cool thing about Ableton is you have something called what mode. It's nothing but time stretching. We all know what time stretching is. Stretching time. Cool. So, so you can either chop it or pitch it up, or you can reverse it. Yes. Let's reverse this. Where is that thing over here? Oh, fuck. Yeah. Oh, that sounds really bad. Just figure it out. Interesting things happen when you reverse a sample. Cool. So I want to talk about time stretching samples. Okay. Let's take a look at something else for that. I have a vocal sample over here. That's the vocal sample I have. Now, time stretching is basically you're trying to slow down a sample or speed it up, right? Now, on Ableton, you have something called walk, which is time stretching, but it comes with like different modes where you can, select either tones. I go into extremes. If I'm working on a track and I finish it right then and there. Or if I don't finish it, I take a really long time so that I can forget the track and then I'll come back to it because I need fresh ears. Otherwise, it's really easy to kind of lose perspective of what's going on.
So what happens when you're mixing? Do you take breaks while you're mixing?
Yeah, I take
How often is it?
As often as I feel, sometimes your ears very often your ears tend to get tired. So you lose perspective. So you need to just...
Listening fatigue.
Yes. So you need to kind of give yourself a break. For me, every 20 minutes to half an hour is a good time to just like get up and go do something and come back. When it comes to mixing, not when it comes to making a track. Making a track, I don't really take any breaks. What else?
So how would you approach sampling? Would you have a sound in mind and you would try to recreate it with the sounds that you already have? Or would you take just a random sound and experiment and find?
Yeah, I'm more like...
Or both?
Yeah, no, I'm more like find a sound and then experiment.
Wherever it goes.
Yeah, I don't get into synthesis, but I don't listen to a sound and say I'm going to recreate it.
No, but like, would you have a sound in mind and go through your library and then?
Oh yeah. Oh, that way, yeah.
Take a sound and modify it to.
Yeah. So if I have a sound in mind, I'll find the sample that's like the closest to it, and then try to get that sound from the sample. Yeah.
Can we use any other software? Just these samples?
What? Yeah, of course. There are no rules. You can do whatever you want.
Like, how do you know when the track is done?
You never know when the track is done. You will never know when the track is done. This is something that I'm learning for myself because there are tracks that I'm just sitting on that are done, but I don't feel like it's done. That's the trouble of being a producer. Yeah, you need to let go. You need to exercise non-attachment with your tracks because after a point, there's always something you can work on. That's why it's great to have your tracks mixed by someone else. All of us know best what we want with our mixes, but it's this trap of like, it will never be done. Something is always off. One time you listen to it and you're like, oh, yeah, the next time you listen to it, something is off again. So don't get into that trap. Know when a track is done. Let go. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Do I need this? Do I need this? Should I?
No, you'll be straining yourself more. You'll strain yourself.
Okay. Any more questions? You had a question, Pratap.
Oh, yes, I was about to ask, since you're into experimental music mostly, and you deal with sounds that are very random, like sometimes when you're making a track, doesn't it become so random that when a normal listener listens to it, it like doesn't even make sense? How do you like make it make sense?
That's up to you.
Huh?
That's up to you. It's perspective at the end of the day. The way I would make a sound make sense is not the same way you would make sense of that sound. Which was why I brought up the 22 challenge, where the sounds, the way they made sense to me, they made a completely different meaning when somebody else approached the same sound.
Yeah.
So that's what you're asking, or are you asking? Did I get your question right?
Kind of, because like if you take normal commercial music, like okay fine, there's a guitar, there's a drum kit, there's this, that going on. But when you're working with experimental tracks, it kind of feels like there is no head and tail, but there is just sounds, the interesting sounds.
Yeah, you can have a hidden tail to it. So if you go on my SoundCloud, there is a recording of one of the performances that I've done. It's a live performance, and I made this piece about conversations and conversations, how relational conversations can get. For example, the way feelings translate through the way we talk or how we communicate, right? If you go on my SoundCloud, my name is Akrti, Ekrti. You can find me on SoundCloud. There is a recording of a live performance, one of my performances. If you sit with it, I think it's about half an hour long. It's a half an hour long piece. It's one single piece that was done live. You sort of understand the story of it, and the story can mean anything to you. Yeah, so you can have a head and tail. Some of the performances do not have a head and tail, and it's completely okay because they're like dreams. Your dreams don't have a head and tail, but there are little bits where you identify with, right? And there is a story you can take. Humans are wired to make up stories when they want to relate to something. So yeah, finding meaning is up to the listener.
What are some of the bands or artists that you listen
Way too many.
to? Anything like that?
Who was I listening to this morning? I was listening to the Beatles this morning, actually.
What if there's one name that you want to take?
Huh?
What if there's just one name that you want to take?
No, that's not possible.
Like that's just one name that influenced you the most.
Some of the names that will you play on track?
Can I play one track?
Yeah. Start as you mean to go.
Why don't I just give you my Spotify history?
No, just start as you mean to go on. Start as you mean to go on by any.
Oh, hey, you know what? I make playlists. So if you go on my Instagram, there is a link in my bio. There's shitloads of playlists that you can find, and yeah, that's the music I listen to. Yeah. Any other question? What do you want?
Start as you mean to go on.
I need to use the restroom. I need to use the restroom. What is it?
Start as you mean to go on.
Start?
As you mean to go on.
Why do you play this here? This is electronic music.
Yeah, so